Have you ever opened up to someone and for a moment it felt like connection? You told them things you don't usually tell people. You shared your past, your pain, your fears, maybe even parts of your story that still feel tender. And in the moment, it felt like this is intimacy. But then later, they pulled away. They used it against you. They didn't know how to hold it, or they made you feel like you were too much. And suddenly, what felt like vulnerability started feeling like regret.
And that is exactly what we want to unpack in this video. Because the problem is not vulnerability. Vulnerability is necessary for a healthy love. The problem I see in dating today is that people open too quickly and too fast without building trust in that connection. That is vulnerability without safety. Because when you open your heart in a space that has not yet proven safe, you may not actually become more connected. You may become more fragile. And that is why we need to understand the difference between openness, vulnerability, fragility, and emotional intimacy.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought, maybe if I tell them everything, they will finally understand me? Maybe if I show them my pain, they will come closer. Or maybe if I explain what I've been through, they won't leave. Maybe if I'm vulnerable enough, they will choose me. Be honest. How many of you have ever thought that? And that sounds like vulnerability. But sometimes it is actually fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being rejected, fear of losing the connection. Fear that if they don't see my pain, they won't value my heart.
And that is exactly where most people get hurt. Because they are trying to create emotional intimacy by sharing deeply. But safety has not yet been built. Trust has not yet been tested. Consistency has not yet been proven. Emotional maturity has not been demonstrated yet. So now you have exposed something tender, but the relationship does not yet have the strength to hold it. That is when openness can become fragility.
That's almost like you pouring water into a cup that isn't fully built yet. So the water will just spill.
And that's what I love about Brené Brown. Brené Brown describes vulnerability as involving uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So yes, vulnerability will always carry some risk. People sometimes view vulnerability as weakness, but it is not that at all. Risk is part of vulnerability, courage, and connection. But here is the part people often miss. Not every risk is wise, and not every person is safe. Not every moment is the right moment to share something deep.
Vulnerability is not, here is my whole inner world, please don't hurt me. Vulnerability is, I am willing to be seen, but I'm also discerning about who has earned access to this part of me. That is very different, because healthy vulnerability is not self-abandonment. It still has wisdom, it still has space, and it still has boundaries.
So let's start with openness. Openness is the beginning. It is when you start sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your feelings, your dreams. It might sound like I've been hurt before. I struggle to trust sometimes. That situation affected me. I'm still learning how to deal with that. I'm still learning how to communicate better. Openness says, I'm letting you know me. But openness is not the same as full emotional intimacy.
Let me give you an example. You are dating someone new. The connection feels strong. You stay up all night talking. The conversation goes deep. They say all the right things. So now you feel seen. So you start opening up. And because the conversation feels emotionally intense, you think, this person really knows me. But the truth is, they may only know what you shared. They have not shown you how they handle conflict, how they respond when you say no, how they treat your vulnerability when they are upset, how consistent they are when the excitement settles. That is why openness is only the first door. It is not the whole house.
Vulnerability is something much deeper. It's when you share something tender in a space where you have built trust. Not perfect trust, but enough safety to say, this person has shown me the capacity to handle me with care. That means vulnerability is not only about what you share, it's also about where you share it, with whom, when, and whether the relationship has enough emotional maturity to hold it.
So that leads us to fragility. Fragility is what can happen when you have shared something tender, but the space was not safe enough to hold it. So maybe they judged you, maybe they withdrew, maybe they used it against you, like you mentioned before. Or maybe they made you feel like your pain is baggage. But the thing is, then you don't just feel hurt, you actually feel exposed and you feel foolish. You think, why did I tell them that? I should have just kept quiet. And what most people end up is judging themselves, saying, I am too much.
And that automatically creates shame and guilt. And then influence how you perceive yourself, your self-perception,
And then the knock-on effect. I will never open up like that again. That is fragility.
Let me give you a short story. A man tells his partner in my previous relationship, I made a mistake. I'm ashamed. I've cheated. And I'm still carrying the guilt of that. So in that moment, there's true openness. He's sharing what is really real.
Maybe even vulnerability.
Most definitely. But later, every time they are around other people and the partner starts to feel insecure, she actually automatically goes to the thing which she shared. She says, you cheated before. How do I know you won't do that again? You're probably flirting. Now, what he shared is being used against him. So she's actually basically using it as manipulation to prove her point and to prove her insecurity as right.
Sure.
And now his openness has become a weapon in the relationship. And instead of creating intimacy, it creates fragility. Now he may shut down, not because vulnerability is bad, but because the space you shared it in is not safe. And then later on, the human wants vulnerability again, because vulnerability creates intimacy, but he will never open up again because she already set the norm.
And that happens more often than not.
This is where Amy Edmondson's idea of psychological safety can help us. She originally used it in the workplace, but the principle applies deeply to relationships too. Psychological safety is the belief that you can speak up, take interpersonal risks, ask questions, admit mistakes, or share concerns without being punished or humiliated for it. Now bring that into love. Can I tell you the truth without being mocked? Can I say I'm hurt without you attacking me? Can I admit a mistake without it being used against me forever? Can I share a fear without you withdrawing love? That is safety.
And without safety, vulnerability cannot create intimacy. It creates exposure. Have you heard people say, I opened up and it made everything worse? Maybe you've said that yourself, and maybe you did open up, but the relationship did not have the safety to hold what you opened. And that is not a reason to shame yourself. It actually gives you a reason to learn discernment.
So let's make this practical. Openness says, I am starting to share. Vulnerability says, I'm sharing something tender in a space where safety is being built. Fragility says, I shared something tender, but the space was not safe enough, and now I feel exposed or wounded. Emotional intimacy says, we have built enough trust, maturity, and safety that we can see and hold each other more deeply and safely. Yeah.
The problem is people confuse these concepts and then get hurt and add to their wounding instead of healing their wounding. That is why it is important to know the difference, because if you confuse openness with intimacy, you may move too fast. And if you confuse intensity with intimacy, you might ignore red flags. If you confuse exposure for vulnerability, you may blame yourself when someone mishandles your heart. And if you confuse fragility for weakness, you may shame yourself. You may shame the very part of you that actually needs care. So we want to ask you, be gentle on yourself. This is very human.
Yes.
So before moving on, grab a pen and notepad and write down your answers to these questions. Number 1, where have I confused openness with intimacy? Number 2, where have I shared deeply before safety was built? Number 3, have I ever used someone else's vulnerability against them? So where I've been the culprit. Number 4, has someone used my vulnerability against me, where I've been the victim? And number 5, do I tend to open up from safety or from fear of losing the connection? And lastly, what would wise vulnerability look like for me now?
If this has been part of your story, leave one word below. Rushed if you opened up or moved faster than the relationship was ready for. Guarded if being hurt made it harder to let people in. Learning if you are choosing to build trust, safety, and intimacy at a healthier pace. Just one word. Where are you right now? Because vulnerability is beautiful, but vulnerability without safety can become fragility.
And emotional intimacy is not rushed, it is built. One honest, safe, responsible moment at a time.